Hello everyone and welcome to the Model Forms lectures for Django. And we have seen how we can use Django forms to grab information from the user and then do something with it on the backend. And so far we have only printed out that information directly into the console. Nothing too useful. But what if we actually wanted to grab that information and save it into a model? So maybe we have user that's signing up for our website and we want to save their information to a model or something, inputting a reply post to a comment, and we want to save that information to a model so we can always have it in our website. So how do we actually do that? Luckily, Django makes accepting form input and then passing it to a model very simple. Instead of inheriting from that form class, we are instead going to be using forms model form in our forms.py file. This helper class allows us to create a form from pre-existing model. We then add an inline class, something we have not actually seen before, called meta. And this meta class provides information connecting the model to the form. And that topic of an inline class is actually really simple. It's just a class within another class. Let's see some example code of what this new type of model form class would look like. Alright, so this is the most generic code example that you would find inside an application's form.py file. The very first thing you need to do is the actual import, just like before. Okay, so we will say from Django import forms. Except this time we are going to be using forms model from instead of just forms that form, and then we also need to actually import our model from the models.py file inside our application. So you can import this however you want. Typically you will see it is done from my app models import my app. A lot of times people also say from dot import models my model etc. We have the actual form class. So you have actual class, whatever you wanted to call your form. In this case, we are calling it my new form, and then you inherit or derive from the forms and that model form class. So this is a subclass of that model form, very similar to what we did before. Right below that, you have the form fields that we showed earlier in the course, and then we have the meta class. That's the inline class, and this is what's really going to connect the model to the form fields. So again, the fields attribute inside of that class, that inline meta class, is going to do a lot of the connection to the model. So right now I have it in red about certain options, but let's discuss a little bit more about that inline class. So there are many ways to make that connection on the fields attribute of that inline class meta, but you first need to think about security for the fields, and it is also very common to not actually provide any additional field information. So before I mention that form, fields like we typically saw would go right below that my new form class. But often since you are already matching up the form to match up with the model, exactly you don't actually need to specify those fields. So you will typically just see the inline class immediately after that form class. So that's a very common to see as well. And you can have the form be just generated completely from the model, and that saves you a lot of work. You don't have to type in those fields again. All you have to do is say class meta model equals my model and then connect the fields somehow, which we are going to talk about several options in just a little bit. But if you want to actually use custom validators like we previously discussed, then you do have to pass in those form fields where you provide the validator parameter. So most of the custom validation you will have to provide if you want it, but the automatic cleaning and validation will be directly from your model. So remember, your model had its own constraint, and those sort of validation just come automatically when you call class meta and connect that to your model. So it's really up to you how you want to see this. It's very common just to see this class, your form and then directly below it class meta and not have to worry about any custom validation. Alright, let's continue on by discussing how we can actually work with that fields attribute that's inside inline class meta. So option one is just to set it to the special keywords underscore and all underscore all then underscore them into the form. Okay. Option 2 is to specify what fields you actually want to exclude. So here you can just pass in a list of all the fields, the names that you want to exclude. So you will say my model and I actually don't want to include field 1 in the form of field 2 in the form. And then option there is to actually list the included field instead, so you can debate whether you have a huge model if it's easier to just include, or if you have a small model if it's easier just to exclude. Really depends on what is better for you. All right, so we briefly went over the options of how to connect the field, but I definitely suggest you check with the documentation for more discussions on how to connect the fields in the form to the fields in the model. The documentation page is really great for the model forms. Basically, just Google Django plus model form. It's take you there has a ton of examples, ton of different situations, and more discussions on certain security things. So if you plan on making this a big website where for some reasons malicious users are going to come, fields and forms are definitely something you want to keep secure. Django has a lot of built-in stuff. We have already seen things like the CSRF token and even these special calls. Two options take security in mind, but if that's a big concern for you, definitely check out the documentation, full discussion on that. So let's get some practice for all of this. And what we are going to do is by trying adding a model form to our Pro 2, that was second project, Pro 2 project. So this project, if you remember, had a single user class in its model.py file. What we are going to be doing is connecting it to form, allowing users to register their names and emails to the site. And this sort of logic could easily be used to create a simple coming soon landing page. So you have probably seen these single one pages website where you go in there working on a project and they say coming soon. Okay, we come back and email you need to enter email and name whenever the project launches, and just has enter your name, enter your email address and submit. And then we submit that information goes to a database that they can later access. So this is easily something you could do just based off the information in this lecture plus everything. So we have already learned about that. All right, so to get started, make sure you have the Pro2 app folder from your Django label to learning, and to see the completed version of this, check out the Pro2 folder in the Django label 3 folder also in our document section. Again, we are going to start with the finished Pro2 folder from Django level 2 and then work on it. So, okay, thank you for joining this lecture, and this is all about this. Okay, thank